Hello, my friend. How you doing today? It's been a while since I've found something new, and here we have something new. This little gem I found called Spinoza Selections. Spinoza Selections, edited by John Wilde. This is a pretty heavy-duty book. It's 479 pages, and it was originally published, copyright 1930. This version published 1958. You can see the original price on it was $2.95. Imagine, wow. The laminate on it is starting to peel off. I found this at a thrift store for, like 25 cents. It also has a price tag on it, $3.50 from York University. So I guess at one time it was sold at York University, probably at a secondhand book sale of some type. So you can find these little gems at thrift stores. I bought it with a collection of other books. And like I said, it was like around a quarter, 50 cents or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it was less than $1. Now, I just want to mention I've started to dig into it. The introduction itself is almost 60 pages long. It's 59-page introduction by John Wilde. John Wilde starts with an interesting account of Spinoza's life. Baruch Spinoza. He was born in 1632 and he passed away in 1677. And it's interesting because he's a very influential philosopher and he's quoted by many different thinkers throughout the ages since that time. But he was widely considered to be an atheist, whereas from what I've already read so far, it's obviously he wasn't. What happened was he was brought up Jewish, and his family was trying to escape a type of forced conversion that was happening at the time. This was a time, remember, Calvin was born in 1509 and died in 1564. So Calvinism, the Protestant Reformation, was in full swing. So between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Reformation, there was a strong push to persecute anybody that wasn't Christian. Anybody that would have been even thought to have been an atheist could have been attacked. In fact, Spinoza was attacked at one time, apparently on the steps of a synagogue. Somebody tried to stab him with a knife. I have these visions of Monty Python-like sketches, the mid-1600s, where anybody that wasn't Christian was like, heretic, and they would attack them, type of thing. And so even on the rumor that some of his writing was atheistic in nature could cause a lot of problem. And what happened was Spinoza was excommunicated from the local Jewish congregation of his day at a young age, I think in his early 20s, 23 or something. And so, unfortunately, that's what happened to him. And so when he died, his work, which was entitled Ethics, was published, and it became extremely famous and popular from that day forward. It was called Ethic, without an S on the end. Ethic was his main work, but he wrote a lot of different works, and the one that I just started is called On the Improvement of the Understanding. The introduction that is given by Wilde is valuable when it talks about his biography, but what happens is that afterwards he goes in and tries to summarize a lot of the thinking and themes of Spinoza, and it devolves into, sounds like the writing of William James, the introduction. So I thought, oh, here I go. I'm going to be stuck in 475 pages of text, which is almost as difficult to read as Latin because it's so elevated, so to speak. But I'm pleasantly surprised because once I got through the introduction, which I'll leave, I'm not going to go into detail on the introduction, I'll leave that. The actual, I've only dug into the first 8 pages of Spinoza's first work that is included here, called Improvement of Understanding, on the improvement of the understanding. And so I've just started to dip my toes into it, and he writes very lucidly, very easy to understand. So I'm just going to start to cover this book for you. And if you are interested in joining me on this journey, I don't know how exciting it's going to be. Probably not that exciting. But if I do find something that catches my attention, I will quote it in the notes to the video. So you don't actually have to watch any of these videos. You can just look down in the description, and if there's any valuable notes that stand out that I want to share with you, just read those notes, and then you don't have to bother watching these videos. Because think about it, I'm going to go through 475 pages. There is nobody on the planet that's going to have the patience, unless you're a philosophy student and you want to get a different opinion. Great, that's good. I do hope that there are some people that might be interested, but I'm barely going to be able to keep my interest in it. How am I going to keep an interest through 475 pages, 479 pages of some guy writing from the 1600s? It's going to be a stretch. So like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find anything that jumps out at me that seems valuable or relevant today, or that could be of help to you, the viewer, something that could be inspiring, encouraging, insightful. If I see anything that follows those, I will write them in the comment section. So that way, like I said, you don't have to watch the video. Just look at any of the comments. If there's any valuable quotes, you can take a note of it and say, oh, that's interesting. And then you can just move on, because I don't really expect anybody to want to sit through, 10 videos on this. And by the looks of it, I mean, it's going to take, how long is it going to take me to get through this? It's going to keep me occupied for the next little while. So anyway, for today, I'm going to just mention a few things that Spinoza talks about. This guy who was, like I said, brought up Jewish, but he had his teachers had a lot of Christian friends, and he moved to Amsterdam, so he was Dutch, and then he learned Latin, and he wrote in Latin, and then it was translated over time. So he had a lot of Christian influence, and he studied extensively the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, and he had strong opinions on that. But I would definitely consider him a theist. So far, he was by no means an atheist. That label that he has, I don't know why he would get that label. It must have been that people would have picked out certain elements of his words and labeled him as an atheist to support their atheism, or for whatever ulterior motives they may have had. But I'll get to the bottom of the matter and I'll find out. But I didn't have to go very far to see that, oh, this guy's a theist. Great. I was kind of expecting him to be an atheist, simply because he was quoted so much by the founders of pragmatism, William James, and the founders of pragmatism and the founders of humanistic thought. They depended on a lot of the writings of Spinoza. So for some reason, I just thought, oh, he must be an atheist too. But in any event, I know that he's a well-known philosopher. I'm interested in philosophy, so I want to study it. I haven't had a chance to study Spinoza in the past, even though I probably read a lot of his quotes or heard his name mentioned on numerous times. So I'm going to dig into what he has to say. And it's interesting because he says here, he starts by basically saying that he's interested in searching for the truth. And he says barriers to the truth are these three things: riches, fame, and the pleasures of sense. It could be a parallel to the lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and the boastful pride of life. Anybody that's familiar with Scripture will know of those three enemies to humanity. But he calls them riches, fame, and pleasures of sense. And we're told in his biography that he had a dispute with his family inheritance. I guess his father was a wealthy merchant, and his sister tried to cut him out of the will because of his beliefs and because he was excommunicated by his synagogue and so on and so forth. So even his family disowned him. But he was able to win a court judgment so that he was awarded his inheritance, but then he ended up giving it over to his sister anyway. He signed it over to her, apparently, because he wanted to reject riches, fame, and the pleasures of sense in exchange for his pursuit of truth. That's how much he wanted to pursue truth, was he didn't want to be distracted. He said here, one quote that I thought was interesting. He said, happiness or unhappiness is made wholly to depend on the quality of the object which we love. And so he wanted to love truth. He wanted to pursue truth. Love toward a thing eternal and infinite feeds the mind wholly with joy. He says that. He says that he recognized that the acquisition of wealth, sensual pleasure, or fame is only a hindrance, so long as they are sought as ends, not as means. If they be sought as means, they will be under restraint, and far from being hindrances, will further not a little the end for which they are sought, as I will show in due time. So he's going to say there's a time and a place for pleasures or sensual pleasures or wealth. They're useful if wealth gets you towards where you want to go. If sensual pleasure gets you towards having a family and being productive, then it's okay. If wealth allows you to pursue truth, to live independently, which is what he sought to do. He wanted to be able to live independently, to seek truth through the study of his own thoughts, essentially, and the thoughts of those other people around him with whom he communicated, his rabbis and his friends and his Jewish friends or his Christian friends, and he wanted to be able to understand what truth was. He wanted to understand the eternal order, as he calls it. And he says that he wanted to understand moral philosophy. He wanted to understand medicine. He wanted to understand mechanics. And so he wanted to understand both philosophy and science. And he wanted to, as this essay is called, he wanted to improve his understanding. So he mentions that he says he wants to speak in a manner intelligible to the multitude. So this is very encouraging right off the bat, that he wants to be able to be understood in his speech. And so even though this is probably translated, well, it could be translated from Dutch, but I'm assuming it was translated from Latin, the translation is excellent, that it comes out as very readable for an English reader like myself. He says to indulge in pleasures only insofar as they are necessary for preserving health. These are the three things that he wants to lay down as his preliminary rules. He says to speak in a manner intelligible, to only deal with pleasures as far as necessary to preserve health, and lastly, to endeavor to obtain only sufficient money or other commodities to enable one to preserve our life and health, to follow such general customs as are consistent with our purpose. So he says, having laid down these preliminary rules, I will take myself a first and foremost task, namely to help improve understanding. He calls it the amendment of the understanding, and the rendering capable of understanding things in a manner necessary for attaining our end. So that's as far as I've got. He's laid down these initial things that he mentions, that he doesn't want to be distracted by riches, money, or fame, and he wants to focus all his effort and attention on improving his own understanding and the understanding of those that are willing to listen to him. As far as his career, he was a lens grinder, and apparently, probably because he breathed in these glass particles from grinding lenses for most of his life, he thought it was valuable to take up a useful trade as well. And so he granted these lands, and he died at, like, I think in his early 40s, 44 years old, something like that, from probably silicosis or some type of lung disease that was likely due to his chosen profession. But really, his profession was a full-time thinker, a full-time philosopher, and maybe a bit of a polymath, because he says he wants to study medicine and science. So at that time, you probably had to have a broad view if you were going to be an instructor. And he did work as a instructor at certain times for different people, different individuals that had schools. Although he was offered much higher positions after he started to become popular and people started to read his thinking, he got offered professorships and positions at, like, within a king's court or within a famous university or what have you that they had at the time, perhaps. And most of those he rejected because he didn't want to be distracted from his main effort to live humbly and live frugally, and to dedicate his efforts and thoughts towards seeking and finding truth. So I'm very looking forward to, in the introduction, the guy summarizes some of his arguments for the existence of God, which are kind of, the way he describes it, they're bootstrap arguments, the arguments by definition or ontological argument, all that kind of stuff, which I never really was very fond of, because they're just basically, well, God is so great, therefore God has to exist. I hope there's a lot more substance to that than these type of arguments, but he's obviously got a lot to talk about. So I'm going to dig into it, and I just want to say thank you again for watching and being patient with me. I just did a video about wealth that I threw in there, so you may see me throw in a few videos here and there about something that becomes topical in my mind. Sometimes I'll throw videos about current state of economics or politics if I see something that really catches my attention. But I think for the next little while, I'm just going to crawl into this book and spend some time camping out in there. Oh, I don't like that phrase because I know where I've heard that before. But I'm going to spend some time living together with Spinoza for the next at least couple of weeks. And hopefully I can share something of value to you from that. And hopefully it'll improve myself as a thinker, because I'd like to be a thinker. I'd like to be able to know what other people have thought. Imagine this written in the mid 1600s. So you're reading the ideas of somebody over 500 years approximately. 2130, well, not quite 500, 400 and almost 500 years old. But yeah, so I'm excited to be able to dig into this and see where it leads. So God bless you. Thank you for watching. I love you very much. I know that God loves you too. I believe that. I don't see why I shouldn't believe that. I've been looking for anybody that can convince me otherwise, in a way, but really, I'm not going to be convinced otherwise. But yeah, let's dig into Spinoza. Whoa, and see where it leads. Oh, there goes some of that. There goes some of that. It's got this funny laminate on it, which is slowly coming off. I mean, this book is almost 60 years old itself, so it's getting up there in age as well. So thank you again for watching. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Hope you're able to get some fresh air. It's getting chilly out these days with the fall upon us and the winter coming. You can see I'm going to be wearing this sweater for the next little while. But yeah, take care of yourself. And we'll talk to you again real soon, okay? Be good. Love your neighbor. Don't hate anybody. It's easy to hate in today's environment because the social media envelope of which we are a part is goading us to hate one another. And this is not a good place to be in, right? We're told we're supposed to love one another, even love our enemies. Could you imagine? What a bizarre concept that is. Whereas all of media, all of social media, all of the news media is encouraging us to hate something. Say, look at this. We should hate that. Look at that. You should hate that. Look at that. Isn't that horrible? Isn't that terrible? Once they get you to say, isn't that terrible? They've got you, right? So don't let them get you. Don't let them grab a hold of you and say, oh, isn't that horrible? Keep that away and focus on the positive. Get some fresh air. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy yourself. Spend time with those you love. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.